They called him the Wolf of the Steppes, the storm that devoured kingdoms. His name was Genghis Khan, and to hear it spoken was to feel a cold that no fire could chase away. Long before his riders appeared, the fear arrived. Merchants told tales in whispers. Cities far from the Mongol frontier fortified their walls at the mere rumor of his approach. From the far grasslands came the thunder of hooves. Dust rose in great clouds as if the earth itself tried to hide what was coming. But there was no hiding from the horde. For every city, there were two choices: submit or resist. Submission could mean survival. Resistance could mean a punishment so complete the city's name would be erased. The Yasa, his code of law, forbade torture. It promised justice, discipline, and order. But in the smoke of his campaigns, another law ruled, one written in fear and fire. Chroniclers from Persia, China, and the Middle East tell the same story. Towns erased, captives broken, and the Khan turning their suffering into a warning the world would never forget. In 1221, the city of Merv stood as a jewel of the Khwarezmian Empire. Its walls high, its markets rich with silk, spices, and silver. The Mongols came bearing promises of peace. The citizens believed those promises. The gates swung wide. The riders entered. And then the masks fell away, revealing the true price of trust in the Khan's mercy. Soldiers poured into the streets. Steel flashed. Doors splintered. Nobles were dragged to the central square, their voices raised in pleas that dissolved into screams. One survivor, an elderly merchant, later told his grandson, "I saw the Khan on his golden seat. He did not shout. He only watched, and that was worse than rage." Flames rose at the edge of the city. Smoke curled into the darkening sky. The cries of the dying mixed with the clash of steel. Merv had become a theater of horror. For 3 days, the killings continued. Citizens were executed in rows. Some were spared just long enough to witness the deaths of loved ones, the memory burning into their minds. By the time the smoke cleared, Merv was gone. Maps no longer marked its place. Survivors lived in silence, speaking the name Genghis Khan only in whispers. Months later came Nishapur. This time, vengeance burned hotter still. Genghis's son-in-law had been killed. His daughter Boru demanded the city's annihilation. The order was given, no life spared, not warriors, not women, not children. Even the animals would be slaughtered so that nothing living remained to tell the tale. For days, the streets ran with chaos. Soldiers went door to door. No room was left unsearched. The cries of the doomed rolled like a tide through the narrow alleys. When it ended, skull pyramids rose in the ruins. One for men, one for women, one for children. Even pets were piled together in death. A mother who escaped into the hills with her infant swore she saw the piles from miles away, white bones gleaming in the moonlight like frozen waves. Chroniclers wrote that the death toll reached hundreds of thousands. Some claimed millions. Whatever the truth, the silence afterward was absolute. At Otrar, vengeance took a new form. The governor had betrayed a Mongol trade caravan. His punishment, molten silver poured down his throat until life and voice were gone. In Termez, greed met cruelty. A woman had hidden pearls by swallowing them. When discovered, she was cut open. Soon, others suffered the same fate in a search for treasure. These were not mere acts of rage. They were deliberate performances, messages to the next city that might dream of defiance. Even surrender was no shield. At Urgench, peace was promised, then shattered when the Mongols saw the wealth behind the city's gates. Walls were leveled, families were split apart, captives were bound and left in open fields to die from thirst under the punishing sun or freezing steppe winds. Some victims were impaled outside the walls, their bodies swaying like grotesque banners. Others were hung where travelers would see them from miles away. At Samarkand, the city yielded quickly, but artisans and scholars were seized and carried away. The rest were driven into servitude or scattered into the wilderness. Bukhara was taken with speed. Genghis addressed the people in their mosque, declaring himself the scourge sent by God. Then his army stripped the city bare. Herat resisted once and paid with its life. When it rose again in rebellion, the Mongols returned and left no stone standing, no family whole. The fear spread faster than the armies themselves. Villages fled at the first dust cloud on the horizon, leaving behind homes, harvests, and graves. Legends tell of mouths sewn shut, boiling cauldrons, and the living buried to their necks before being beaten. True or not, these stories carried his power far beyond the battlefield. Imagine the moment the horde appeared, dust like smoke, the ground trembling, drums pounding in time with every terrified heartbeat inside the city walls. For hours, the defenders waited. Every creak of the gate sounded like the first blow. Every distant shout could be the herald of their doom. When the attack came, it was sudden and total. Arrows fell like rain. Fire swept across rooftops. Then the gates were breached, and the real horror began. Genghis Khan understood a truth few conquerors grasped. Fear breaks faster than stone. And for many, the threat of what he might do was enough to surrender. But for those who resisted, the cost was complete. Lives ended, histories erased, and the survivors left to spread the tales that would make his name eternal. Even now, historians argue over the details. But whether every account is true hardly matters. The legend itself was a weapon. Genghis Khan's empire was built on both loyalty and dread. He united tribes under his banner and taught the rest of the world to fear it above all else. Some rulers are remembered for what they built, others for what they destroyed. Genghis Khan is remembered for both, and for the shadow he still casts. Because some shadows are not just long, they are eternal. And in that shadow, the echoes of his enemies' screams still drift across the steppes.